Good afternoon, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing a video for those of you who maybe want to get into nature journaling but feel overwhelmed by the vastness of the natural world. Maybe you feel stuck and don't know where to start because the idea of nature journaling is too broad. And something that can help with that is choosing a theme for your nature journal. So, a nature journal doesn't have to encompass every single thing you notice or every single occurrence or experience you have in nature. You can whittle down your interests and make those the theme of your nature journal. So, you have a direction to go in that isn't quite so broad. I'm going to refer back to a piece of advice that I've given frequently on this channel, and that is to start with your own interests and your own passions. Obviously, that advice is for anyone starting a nature journal, but if you choose an interest or a passion as the theme of your nature journal, it just gives you a direction to go in, and it helps you to know what to look for when you go out. It can feel a little aimless sometimes, especially if you only have access to your own yard, or maybe you live in a subdivision or a city. Have you ever noticed that when you notice something like a species for the first time, after that you see it all the time? If you open your observational eye, that can happen. So this is sort of unconscious because you're accidentally noticing these things more. But by choosing a theme, you're consciously noticing those things more because you're putting in effort actively to find and notice that particular thing. And when you do that, your life will become rich in whatever it is that you choose. So I'm going to talk about a few different topics to help you choose a theme for your nature journal. The first is species. Consider what it is that you currently notice in nature. Do you enjoy feeding the birds? Bird life is a great theme, as there are so many species of birds, and generally there's a rotation of birds throughout the year, so you'll find different species at different times of year. Mosses and lichens are a good theme to follow in the winter months. I know it can feel like there's not a lot to see in the winter, but I promise there is. And with organisms like lichen, those are sometimes easier to see in winter because the leaves on the trees have fallen and the branches are bare, and a lot of times that's where you'll find the lichens, on the bare tree branches. Choosing a specific species is probably the most specific you can get when choosing a theme for your nature journal. Even if you feel like it's a little too specific for you and your interests, it's still a good place to start if you're feeling stuck because of the blank page in front of you. Another option for theme is to choose a specific place. So if there's something that you find joy in on a daily basis, like if you take daily walks or your daily drives, or maybe there's something that you've noticed in your backyard or your neighborhood, something that you enjoy on a daily basis, or maybe you have a favorite park, like a city park or a state park. Any place that you visit frequently or want to visit frequently could be the theme of your nature journal. So, with this particular approach, I would think of it as more of a scientific decision. Think of it through the mind of a naturalist. You could make your nature journal a field guide of sorts and focus on the species that you find in that particular area. Something you can do that can help with this is to assign yourself a sit spot. So, a sit spot is just a place that you choose, somewhere that you go frequently to sit and observe. So, in this case, you'd be sitting and observing species and happenings only from the sit spot. And if you'd like, you can observe them within a certain area of space as well. Your sit spot could be at your local pond or even just a corner in your backyard. I want to real quick mention a book that I've read in the past. and that is called The Forest Unseen by biologist David Haskell. And the whole premise of this book is he has a sit spot and he goes to it very frequently to observe the species. And his sit spot, he is observing the species within, I think, a square meter. So it's not a very large space, but he's dedicated to observing the species within that small area in the woods. So if a sit spot is something you're interested in, I would recommend starting with that book. Anywhere that you can visit frequently or easily, any place that's accessible to you, can be a sit spot, even if you're just observing from your kitchen window. You could also adapt this theme to fit specific ecosystems. So maybe there is a pond, or maybe there's a creek nearby, and you could focus on the species of the waterways. Or if you live on or near the beach, you could focus on tide pools. Another option is to focus on a project. So for this theme, you would be using your nature journal in tandem with something that you're already doing or something that you want to do. Sorry if the light is going. It looks like it's getting quite a bit darker in here. What I'm planning on doing in the new year is to assign my Nature Journal Educator certification stewardship project to my nature journal. So it's a requirement of my certification to create or partake in a stewardship project and then to record that project for at least 6 months. And my personal project is I am working towards getting my backyard certified as a wildlife habitat. So naturally, that's going to be the theme of my nature journal. And it's just going to be a compilation of the observations I record specifically in my yard as I garden and grow the nature around my home. Other projects that you could partake in, maybe projects that are a bit smaller than the one that I'm doing, is you could build owl boxes and focus on observing the species that visit them. Or you could build a brush pile and observe the species that overwinter. As I said, if you choose this route, it's easy to add your nature journal if these projects are things that you're already doing. And if you're watching this video, it's probably because you're thinking about nature journaling. And if you're thinking about nature journaling, I assume that you're already interested in nature and maybe you're already working on projects. Maybe you volunteer at a local park. Any small thing that you're doing, think about how you can add your nature journal practice to it. The next theme is weather. And this is a bit of a more obscure one, but I did want to add it in here to maybe inspire a little more curiosity in your nature journal practice. Focusing on natural occurrences during specific types of weather events can be interesting since the things that you see during one event is going to be different than what you see during another event. For instance, you could keep a record of what you notice on snowy days. You can keep track of the temperature or look for animal prints. Or you could make a point to go out on rainy days. I always enjoy these because they bring out species that I don't normally see, or species that I don't see as frequently, such as frogs and turtles and newts. And usually it's the amphibians that like to come out during the wet days. As I said, this method is a little more obscure, but I want to show you that really you can adapt any facet of your life, any interest, into your nature journal practice. The last theme that I'm going to talk about is probably the least specific one, and that is focusing on the seasons. So separating your nature journal into the seasons is something that invariably happens throughout the year. That's just natural because the cycle of the year. But if you pay close attention to the species that come and go, you'll notice that there is a turning wheel of visitors. In winter, I see bird species that I don't see any other time of year, like the cedar waxwing or the starling, and I'm sure they're around. I'm sure they're out there, but I don't see them at my house until winter comes. Spring could be a more wet, humid season depending on where you live. And again, amphibians, reptiles, they like to come out when it's rainy and wet. Even though we're not necessarily whittling down the possibilities with this method, it's still easier to start because you're taking it in a bite-sized chunk. So if you dedicate your whole sketchbook or your whole nature journal to winter and you fill it out, once you're done, you have a whole winter book. And then you do the same for spring, and you do the same for summer and then autumn. And even though the theme is still fairly broad in this case, it's still something to focus your efforts on. And it's nice to be able to look back and see the species that you become familiar with, the species that you notice, and maybe even certain animals that return time and time again that you form a relationship with, and being able to look back through these books and see when you observed them last is kind of a special thing. I hope this video has inspired you and helped you see that nature journaling can be more than this big boring thing with no direction. You're allowed to be creative in your nature journal endeavor because we want our nature journals to be a reflection of us. And it makes it so much easier to return to time and time again when it's something that we enjoy, something that we feel passionate about. Whether you garden or you volunteer at parks or other natural locations, or you just feed the local birds, adding the nature journal practice to your life, to the things that you're already doing out of passion and joy, will enhance your interests and your life. If you made it to the end of the video, I want to say a very big thank you. I appreciate you, whether you're a subscriber or just stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't hesitate to ask questions in the comments or request video topics or anything like that. And as always, I love to hear about your journals and your lives, if there's anything you'd like to share. The sun is about to go away, so that's my cue to say goodbye. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.